Hello everyone, it is the 2nd of November. I have just finished filming the final clips for my my September Lisbon vlog. That's how far behind I am on things. And I don't actually think I filmed many clips for my October vlog, as in talking about books. I filmed clips here and there, but October was just a really weird month for me. Like I have not been in the headspace to be sitting down filming videos. I have not been great, so this is not my priority. Like no one is forcing me to do this, so you know, I haven't been doing it. But I am trying. I did say I wanted to make the monthly commitment of reading books. I am trying to do that. So I have read one book in November, and I mean, considering this is the 2nd of November, it's not bad going. I read so many good books in October, like love that for me, I'm not gonna lie. So I read this book. I finished reading it yesterday and I started it the day before, so like the 31st of October or the 30th, I can't remember. It's called Take a Breath by S.K. Paisley. This was actually sent to me by the author's husband. Probably not last year, the year before, because that's how bad I am with these things. Like I said in one of my other videos, it's why I've stopped taking like books for review. This is set in Glasgow, so that's one of the reasons why I actually accepted it. And I actually really enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is a crime thriller novel, and it is about a drug dealer named Paul. It says a former drug dealer named Paul, and he's forced to relieve a tumultuous love affair with a young woman named Lena. As his past unfolds, he reveals his bloody ties to the city's brutal underworld and its most savage denizens. I think I mispronounced this last time as well. Manny Monroe, a hardened criminal with a lust for violence. This is really good because it's told in a really good way that you're able to go back and forth to like the past and present day. The majority of the story definitely takes place, or the meat and interesting part of the story takes place in the past. But it is about how Paul essentially became who he was, how he met Lena, and what he was doing at the time, which was being a drug dealer. And then he goes on to like essentially run some sort of club, and it is because of his connection to this guy named Manny Monroe. Initially, we are not told about his connection to Manny, like how it came to be. This only really happens towards the end of the story that we find out how he's connected. And I think with very much with similar things like how, I don't know, these, what are they called? Savage denizens, whatever, you know, these head honchos, the connection is very much built on the fact that they have something over the other person, or the other person is indebted to them in some way. So I wasn't really surprised at the connection between Paul and Manny, but I also thought it was very well handled. Like I thought it was good. But yeah, we essentially find out more about Paul as a person, but also like how he met Lena, because actually he meets her under interesting circumstances. And then I say interesting, it's not the circumstances they meet under that's interesting, but it's the time in her life that's interesting. But then they meet again like 2 or 3 years later, again by chance, and it's about the continuation of their love story essentially, but also how that affects their lives, what is said, what isn't said, and essentially what Paul is actually really doing in rather than what it looks like he's doing. So a lot of this is focused on the sort of criminal activities. There is a sort of undercover inspector around and stuff like that who's obviously trying to bring down big old Manny Monroe. And then the present day, it's hard to say that aspect of it without spoiling it, but essentially Paul is having to relive this because someone wants answers about Lena. Lena hasn't been seen or heard from in years, and there is someone in her life who is literally just like, what the fuck happened to her? And they think that Paul has the answer. Paul has been in prison for a really long time for the murder of someone, and as the story unravels, you find out who that murderer is, but you already know like he's in prison for, like, you know, he's gone to prison for a very long time, and in most cases that can only be for like a murder sentence, so I don't feel like that is a spoiler. I thought this was really well written, really well paced. It captured my interest like all throughout the book. There was never really any points where I was just like, I'm bored by this. I actually thought it was really good. And yeah, I don't know if this is a debut, I'm not really sure, but it seems now that this is actually part of a series now, so there is another one from the perspective of, I guess, the person that Paul is having to recount this whole story to. I'm not 100% sure if that's the truth. But yeah, really happy with this, really glad that I finally got around to reading it, but also really glad that it was good and that I actually really enjoyed it. So that's the first book of November. I don't have any plans for November, so I know November is non-fiction November. Listen, October was so chaotic, like work was busy. My headspace has just been like not great, so there was no way I was like just pre-planning anything. So I do have like a couple of non-fiction books that I always have like on my radar or like to read, so I will be doing that, but there are no official non-fiction November plans. I'm just going to read whatever the hell I want, and I've been making a good dent in the books that are sort of like on my table that I'm like stare at me every single day, because I'm just like, I need to get through this. So I'm making a good dent on that and I'm really happy with that. But yeah, welcome to November's reading vlog. Hi guys, so I haven't picked up a book since I finished the other Take a Breath book that I spoke about. Is this in the way? No, okay. So I'm trying to decide between these two books to read. This was given to me as a birthday present, I think, for my 30th birthday. And this, we all got given like 3 copies at a talk that Anne did. I feel like it was her. When I was studying for my master's. So I think this was in like 2019. And as I said, I'm trying to get through that stack of books that I have. I don't know why now I'm a bit like fixated on it, but in a good way, because before I was like, I really need to reduce that stack, but I don't really want to read any of the books, whereas now like some of the books are a bit intriguing to me. So yeah, whilst I'm in this space where I want to get through it, that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to read either one of these two. This one I think is more definitely of a non-fiction book. Well, this is actually a really sweet note. So, because like I said, this was a gift. It says, Pennac said, when we give someone we love a book we love, it's like sending a piece of ourselves. So I hope this makes you feel my thoughts and love. And then it says, love you always, from my friend. It's really lovely. I forgot that note was in there. But what I wanted to talk about was this, because I don't think I've shown that I've purchased this. So this is Rupi Kaur's 4th piece of like published work, I suppose. And rather than this being a poetry collection, this is actually like a writing poetry prompt guide. But when I saw she was bringing this out, I was a bit like, I feel like that's a bit money grabbing. I'm not gonna lie. The pessimist in me was just like, what? But then, yeah, so I think I saw it maybe a month or 2 before it was like going to publish. So I didn't pre-order it or anything like that. But then when it came to it, I was ordering a different book, I think a poetry collection or something. And then I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, actually, yeah, I'm gonna get that, because I need something to help me continue writing poetry. Like, I always write my poetry random snippets, like literally before I'm going to bed I'll have these random bursts of ideas and I'll write like 4 lines or something, and then like just never really continue the poem on. So I thought I just need something that's going to help guide me through writing, you know, provide me with different prompts, put me in different scenarios in a different headspace. So I'm going to get this and see what it's like, because I actually have all 3 of her poetry collections. I got the 3rd one by pure accident. It was someone sent it to me, a girl that I went to uni with, because like she had that book, and then I was like gonna send it back and she said she didn't want it. So I was like, oh, okay. So now I've got all 3 of her poetry collections. And whilst I didn't enjoy the 3rd one as much, like I do like her poems. Like the first 2, is it Milk and Honey, and then The Sun and Her Flowers? I liked it. I don't know what the other one is called. Homeroom? I really can't remember. But so what this book has, and maybe actually it's just better if I do something like a cutaway, but it has just like different exercises that basically make you write poems or like write a letter, and obviously from that you're able to then, I guess, craft the poems from that. So if you decide to take a little bit further, you can just start to like piece together the poetry that you would like to create from that. But some of it is just a really nice bit of writing exercises to make you do things that you would never really think to write on the topic of, and that's what I wanted this book for, and that's what it's done. Like after I did the first exercise, I was in London in a hotel. I did the first exercise and I was just like, oh my god, I have a poem already. So the first exercise is called What Trauma Looks Like, and it's about like sort of meditating on the word trauma, and from that she asks you to sort of select like phrases, and from those phrases you distill it down to 4 words, and then there's a little prompt. It says the crack in the, and then you're supposed to write a stanza on, like 4 stanzas on the 4 words that you've gotten down, on the 4 words that you've chosen. And then yeah, you write a poem. And I was just like, cool, did it. I looked at the poem and I was like, I fucking love this poem. I'm a genius. No, but obviously it needs a bit of refining. But honestly, about 75% of it was done. And after that, I was like, I freaking love this. And all the other exercises I've been doing, some of them I've gotten poems from, but others, it's just been a nice, like, cathartic exercise. So if you are considering getting this, like, I, at the moment, would wholeheartedly recommend it. I'm on exercise 5, or 6, actually. I've completed exercise 5. And I found it very helpful. There are loads of different prompts in here. She talks about like, so if you've ever read any of Rupi Kaur's poems, she has like some really short poems and she calls them peach pits. And when I read them, I was just like, I really like that concept. Like the way she's broken it down about how she writes them. She talks about the fact that some of them start off as really huge, long poems, and then she essentially distills it down into 4 lines, and usually just like 4 words on each line. So it's just amazing, like, and it's actually very hard to do that. So I just thought actually there's a lot of work that goes into it, and I like the challenge of being able to sort of write a piece like that. I don't think personally it's how I would go about writing my poems, and going forth from this, I'm not sure that I would always write poems like that, but I would like the chance to be able to be like, can I be more concise with this poem? And I think that's always very nice to challenge yourself. So yeah, so far I'm recommending this. I haven't marked this on my Goodreads or anything like that because it's just not a book like that, do you know what I mean? But I wanted to bring it up because I don't feel that I'll be doing a book haul for the rest of this year. I've only done one this year, but this is something I'm really enjoying, and so I thought if there was anyone out there who, you know, likes writing, likes poetry, and is thinking about this, I would definitely recommend it. Hello guys. I don't remember the last time I picked up the camera, but I wanted to talk about, well, I'm going to show you 3 books. I'm just really going to talk about 2 of them. So this one I read maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm not really going to talk about it because it wasn't a fave. I don't really want to waste air on it, but I think I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I finished this a couple of days ago. I picked it up in Waterstones on Saturday, I want to say. Just by pure chance of being in there and like browsing for a book to read before we went to a cafe. And I really enjoyed this. So this is actually number 20 in a series, and it is the Daisy Dalrymple Fletcher series. It's written by Carola, I would say, Dunn, not Carola. I always want to say Carola, but I think the name is actually pronounced Carola. And yeah, this is published by Little Brown, which is good because it means I can get a discount through work for the rest of the series because I really enjoy this. It is cozy mystery detective fiction, and Daisy is the wife of a superintendent. His name is Alex. Sorry, he's a detective chief inspector. I'm not gonna lie, superintendent, detective chief, none of those things mean anything to me. I don't know the hierarchy of it. Like, quite frankly, I absolutely do not care. You're just someone high up in the police. But clearly, I think she is, you know, she does a bit of sleuthing. She's the amateur sleuth, whereas he is, you know, the actual policeman. And I think sometimes she just gets a bit entangled in his cases where she's not meant to. And in this one, she is sent out to stay somewhere. Does it name the random place? It's set in England, so she's sent to some small village, as they all kind of are. And she's recovering from like bronchitis or something like that. And while she's there, there's a woman that she went to school with many, many years ago, and she calls in on her, and they invite her for Sunday lunch. They invite her and her husband go there for Sunday lunch. And so her friend lives with 2 other women, and they're called Superfluous, which is like women who haven't married due to the fact that most of the men have been killed in the war. So these 3 friends live together, and so I can't remember what her friend's name is. I think her friend's name is actually Isabel, and then I think one of them is called Willie. I don't remember the name of the other one. It's not that important. And whilst they're having the Sunday lunch, or they're about to having the Sunday lunch, they never actually get to eat it. They talk about one of the rooms in the house that they've just bought and how the cellar door is locked. They were never given the key to it. And they're talking about like how they think like it has good wine there. Anyway, so Alec decides like he can like break the door open by just like using a coat hanger on the lock. Breaks it open, and there's a dead body there, and that is how the rest of the story starts. None of that is a spoiler because it's all in the back of the book, and it is basically about like sort of Daisy sleuthing, but then Alex's actual sort of formal investigation of it. And obviously it's just about like, it's not his investigation because it has to involve the local police, and it is about like who did it. I thought it was very cleverly constructed. I guessed like 3/4 of the way through who had done it, and I just thought it was really clever because it was like in your face the whole time, as these things usually are. But it was a very enjoyable read. A lot of this, I think, very much is not based on the mystery. It very much is tackling the little day-to-day things of like Daisy going here, like her sort of playing with her kids, and then driving someone here, and then going to someone's house. Like, it's all of that is described, I wouldn't say in great detail, but it's a very medium-paced book. It's not fast-paced. You're not going to get like fast-forwarded through any of those things, but I very much appreciated the sort of setting of the scene. But bear in mind, this is book 20. I think if she's obviously would have done this for all of them, then perhaps that can get a bit tedious. But for me, as someone who just came into it reading this, I thought it was really nicely balanced, and I really enjoyed it as a mystery novel, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I also finally finished this, which is 3 poems by Hannah Sullivan. It took me a very long time to finish this. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars, mainly because so this is split into like 3 poems. On my Goodreads, I was like not realizing that this was actually 3 poems. So they're 3 long poems, and in these sort of sections, it's broken down to 3 sections. Whilst the poems are all on the same, they're kind of on the same theme, some of them are broken down into like actual separate poems. I'm probably describing that very badly. This just wasn't to my taste. I recognise some really great like techniques used in here. I think she has a lot of great style, and you can tell her vocabulary is very varied. I just didn't really enjoy them. I didn't feel much connection to them. They weren't invoking anything in me, and I think I have said this, and I don't know what video, so I'm never going to find it, about like sort of my standards for poetry, but definitely evoking emotion in me is one of the things that I judge a poetry collection by. Like, how does this make me feel? And I didn't really feel anything around this. The last section was to do with like motherhood and to do with her dad. And that evoked some emotion in me. I thought that it was a lot to do with, you know, the waiting, I guess, towards the end of her pregnancy, and then when she's given birth and how she feels after and things like that, and then that sort of connection, I guess, not a connection, the feeling for her father. So that was nice, because there was, for me, some of the things that I expect to feel when I'm reading poetry. The first 2 sections, honestly, the first one was about New York. I can't even remember what the second bit was about. I was just like, okay, cool. So I would have given this 1 star had that final section not come along. So now I am actually going to read this, because this is the other book I got in Waterstones, which is Leslie Loco's Soul Sisters. Now, at the beginning of last year, I want to say, because I don't think it was this year, I read Sundowners by Leslie Loco, which was like a favourite of like teenage Sandra, and I wanted to read it to see what I think of it as an adult. Was it in my teenage years? Like towards the end of my teenage years, or probably like my early 20s. So I still really enjoyed it, and then I just spoke about the fact that she hadn't written any more books recently. She's had a couple of books that I haven't actually read because they just didn't really take my fancy. But this was actually published in 2021, so it was published in the year that I was talking about Sundowners. I just clearly didn't see it. So I saw it and I was like, wow, I'm definitely going to pick this up. So I'm just going to read the blurb to you of what this book is about. It says here, since childhood, Jen and South African-born Kemise, known to her friends as Kemi, have lived like sisters in the McFadden family home in Edinburgh, brought together by a shared family history which stretches back generations. The ties that bind them together are strong and complicated. Solemn, I can't pronounce that second name, is from South Africa's black political elite. Handsome and charismatic, he meets both Kemi and Jen on a trip to London and sweeps them off their feet. Kemi, captivated by Solemn and wanting to discover more about her past, travels to South Africa for the first time. Jen, seeking an escape from her father's overbearing presence, decides to go with her. In Johannesburg, it becomes clear that Solemn is looking for the perfect wife to facilitate his soaring political ambitions. And the real story behind Jen and Kemi's connections threatens to emerge. Solemn's choice will have devastating consequences. Will have devastating consequences for both of them. So very interesting that she's writing again about South Africa, because that is one of the themes in Sundowners. But yeah, this is going to be my next pick. I'm trying to think of anything else that I've been reading. Oh, I've also been reading Bunny on the Kindle for my book club, but honestly, I stopped reading it because I was just like, I feel like I am on drugs. Like, I'm reading this and I don't know what is happening. Like, I know the character is being drugged in some way, shape or form, but honestly, all of this is too baffling. And it's the sense of trying to figure out, like, is this actually happening or is this not happening? And I don't like that. I really don't want to be reading a book and feeling confused about whether or not the character is imagining things or if these things are happening. Because if these things are happening, how are they happening? You know, I'm just like, I can't be bothered to read that. And considering the book club is not being up until January, I was like, I can just pick this up at a late time. So I have been reading that. I don't think I've been listening to anything on audio, so yeah, there's nothing on audio. But yeah, that is where we are so far in the reading. So I'm glad I've had a book that I have enjoyed, and I'm definitely going to start to order the first and second book of that series that I mentioned. I can't remember what the series is called. I think, yeah, it's just called the Daisy Dalrymple mystery. So I'm guessing that's the name of the series. So yeah, that is me. Good morning from a hotel room in Birmingham. I have a couple of minutes before I have to leave, so I thought I would talk to you about this book, which I started on the train, and I'm now kind of halfway through. Do I have any coherent thoughts about this at the moment? I don't know.
No, I am actually really liking it at the moment. There is definitely a theme to Leslie Loco books, which is South Africa, political, kids of political, what are they called? I would say political prisoners, but they're more than political prisoners. People who are like very prominent in parties that want to like overthrow the government. I'm sure there's a term for that. It's too early in the morning for me. And yeah, this one is particularly about two sisters. So we have the first couple of chapters are basically setting the scene for the lineage of these two characters, and then we kind of move to present day where it's these two sisters, Kemi and Jen. Kemi is white and Jen is black. I feel like Kemi is either black or mixed race. I actually couldn't work it out from what has transpired when they had the sort of paragraphs or the chapters explaining the lineage. I would have thought she was mixed race, but I'm not really sure. Either way, she ends up in Edinburgh, Scotland, and there, she Beck. So yeah, they're two sisters. They call themselves soul sisters. Kemi ends up like moving to their house. No one really knows why. I think as the chapters like unravel, well, we know why. Her parents were put away in prison. Her mum was under house arrest. Her dad was put into prison. But we're not sure of the arrangement and basically how like the two families came to know each other that placed Kemi there. But I think as these chapters unravel, we're going to start to get that. However, at the moment, what we have is the two sisters in South Africa at the moment. So they've both lived their lives in Edinburgh, like I said, and then when they both grew up, I think Kemi is about in her 20s, 28, 25, something like that. And she's a surgeon and she wants to do some sort of 3-month residency in South Africa. And she asked Jen to go along with her. And that is where we are now. Up until then, it's really not been like too interesting. I've liked it, but all that's happened is basically we're seeing like Kemi in the hospital. She goes on a date with someone named Solomon, who is like another main character in the story. And at the moment, now that they're all in South Africa, all their storylines are going to intertwine. And I think that's actually where we're going to get the real drama. So I'm on page 224, which is about halfway through the book, and yeah, I feel like a lot of this has been setting the scene, but now we're actually going to get into the meat of the story. Now I'm going to go get some coffee because my voice, yeah, this top isn't that low cut. It looks really low cut on the camera, but like, it's not. Also, I didn't say why I'm in Birmingham, not that you'll care, but I am at, yet again, another conference, and this is actually a therapy and massage conference, and also an occupational therapy conference on the other side. But yeah, it's the last day. At least it's not a 3-day conference, it's a 2-day conference, and it's the last day and the last conference of the year. So yeah.
So the last time I spoke, I was in Birmingham. I was reading this. I have since finished reading this. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, which makes me really sad. But I feel like this book, right, all that I read, I was just like, I feel like this is just meant to be a precursor to the actual story. All that I read, I was like, I literally don't know what was the point in any of the things that I read. And I felt really sad because I really like Leslie Loco. Well, I really like that one book, and then I think one of the other ones I kind of liked as well. But honestly, this book just had such a build-up of all the two characters. It switches between Kemi and Jen. And, like I said initially, it was basically showing us their legacy of how these two girls get to be like soul sisters. And then it, takes place in present day, where every 3 years, like we're skipping every other chapter. No, what am I talking about? Every chapter we're skipping about 3 years ahead in their lives, and we're finding out different things that are happening in their lives. Every single chapter, right? Something would happen, which I was like, cool. Like, not cool, because some of them are really sad stuff. But I thought it was like building up to something greater. But that was just the story. And there's no point in me going into it because it would ruin the story for anyone who wants to read it. But it's just, I don't know, the whole book just felt so inconsequential. I was just like, I don't really understand why I read any of this. Like, all of this for one man to do one thing, and that's fine. But I feel like if that was going to be the purpose and it was meant to be about like this man's ambition, we should have just had a book from his perspective, or at least had sections that were from his perspective. Instead, we end up focusing on Kemi and Jen and just these little things that, not little things, these huge things that happen in their lives, which the book makes feel very meaningless because, when time passes like that, we don't get to spend time with the characters and we don't get to learn about their feelings or their grief or just anything about them and how they dealt with that situation. I was reading reviews of this before I got to the end, and people kept saying that actually one of their problems was every time they were in a chapter and they felt like, something interesting had happened, that's when it would move on to the next section and they really wanted to know more about that other thing. And I was like, I had not even the opposite. I was just like, I didn't find any of the bits in those chapters that interesting and that fascinating. I just thought they were all part of a larger story, but no, that was just the story. And I was just like, I feel like there was no story here and absolutely nothing has happened. But tons of things did actually happen. So that was a bit of a disappointing read. So I got sent this as a proof from work. So the book is called Camp Zero. My manager actually recommended this to me. It's out on the 30th of March 2023, but she thought I might like it, so I asked a proof from one of the other people in the team, and I got it. So what I believe this is told from perspective of 3 different people. At least there are 3 different proofs. So the proof that I have is Camp Zero, but you can also get a proof which has White Alice and one that has the floating city. I will read you the back because even though I am told what it is about, I have just kind of forgotten, but I'll read it and then find out. So it says, Dominion College invites applications for an English tutor position in an innovative campus in the Canadian North. Applicants must have a BA Honours in Literature, impeccable references, and a desire to build a more sustainable way of life. A demonstrated interest in art, architecture, and utopian communities will be taken into consideration. Oh, do you know, I feel like my boyfriend might like this book. I don't know. But it's coming back to me a little bit, and I think it's essentially about like building a smarter, superior race. But I feel like I was also told that, yeah, this was like, it doesn't say it's a floating city. Oh, this bit's, yeah, I was told that it was like a floating city and there are like different levels to this. Something like that. And then what I'm actually reading at the moment, so I was actually toying between reading this and reading that, but I decided to go and read this because I feel like this would be a light, kind of, not light, you know, because considering what it's meant to be about, but even then, it's still light. But I thought it would just be an easy read. And this is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. I feel like everyone would have seen this everywhere. I have seen it everywhere, didn't really have much interest in it, but I'm going to read it. Well, as I'm going to read it, I am now on page 86. I started it last night, and it's actually not too bad. You know, it's funny. I mean, it's not a detective story in any way, shape or form. Obviously, you're just following the narrative of this character who has killed 6 members of her family, but she's actually currently in prison for a murder that she didn't do. So what she's doing is going through the people, like how she killed the members of her family, and then I guess we're going to find out why she's in prison, like who the other person was that died and how she's in prison for it. One thing I found funny about this is, obviously the whole time I've seen the title of this book, I was just imagining like they were a family, like they were her close immediate family, but I like what this book does because it is still her family, but it's literally like family she's never met. So I was just like, how do you go and kill people in your family just like that? But I'm not saying it's easy if you don't know them, but yeah, that was one thing that stood out to me, that I was like, I was so wrong in my assumption. So that is it. I want to talk about podcasts. I feel like I'm still editing my October reading vlog, and I feel like in that one there was barely any book chat, and in this one I feel like there's tons of book chat and it's going to be too long now. But one more thing. I have started and finished listening to a podcast just because they haven't got any other new episodes out, called If Books Could Kill. And honestly, I just want to mention it so that other people can go and listen to it because it is so funny. So I was recommended to listen to the Maintenance podcast, which is a podcast about like weight loss, but not like telling you how to lose weight, but you know, sort of debunking all these sort of things we've heard about food. And they go through like, you know, they reference research, but they go through like, I'm trying to think, the one I'm listening to at the moment is about the keto diet, but there was another one where it's talking about like the food triangle, and this is all based in the US, by the way, and they sort of go about how all of these things came to be. So it's actually quite interesting. It really gives you an insight into, I guess, what goes on into these recommendations of like how you are supposed to eat, like what is going on in the political space at that time. But one of the co-hosts on that podcast, they plugged another podcast that they were starting, and it was called If Books Could Kill. And I don't listen to any book podcasts, and my main reason for that has always been like, I literally don't want any more book recommendations because I don't have time to read all these books. But these ones are so funny because they are like basically slagging off airport books, so just books that have become super popular. The first one they did was Freakonomics, which I've never read, but it was absolutely hilarious when they talk about some of the things that are in that book. And then the second one was the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, I think it actually is. The third one is Bobos, which I've not read. So I've read Outliers, and I actually really liked it, and the aspects I liked of it, thankfully, were not the bits they slagged off, but even so, like, it's a very funny podcast, because when I say they're slagging it off, really what they're doing is they're looking at the research that these authors credit, and they're just like, none of this is like makes sense, or if you just dug a little deeper, you would know that that is not true. absolutely hilarious. I have been like, it's been so long that a podcast has just made me laugh out fucking loud because some of the things they say is just so snarky. So yeah, that is my talk. It's actually getting near the end of the month anyway, so I might be leaving this reading vlog here. I am about to pour myself a glass of wine. I showed it in a vlog, well, it's the October vlog that I'm editing, but when I went to the Scottish Influencer Awards, it was sponsored by Whispering Angel, which is, I feel like at the time I didn't really remember that like Whispering Angel, not that it's a thing, but obviously there was a time on the internet where everyone was talking about this rosé. So yeah, but there was so much free rosé there that I was literally like, I could never drink another bottle of this, but I completely forgot I had it, and 2 days ago I was just like, oh, because they gave us a goodie bag and I was meant to show that in that vlog. I didn't, and I've started to use some of the products, so maybe I'll just do it later, I don't know. But yeah, I saw the goodie bag like 2 days ago and I was like, oh yeah, and then I put the wine in the fridge and now I want it. So yeah, I'm probably going to sign off here. If I don't, then I'll just cut this bit of the video out. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in another one. I did want to film a video today, I didn't get the chance, and yeah, such is my life. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.